It's a pleasure to be here to join in on your lunch table. You'll want to have a pen and a paper handy because one of the things we're going to do today is a bit of an exercise. So I'll have you kind of delve in and participate in that. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Um, you know how it feels when you have accomplished some really significant things in your life and you just feel like you're left like it's not quite enough, or there might still be something missing. uh, we're taught to chase what I call outer wins. And they could be like more education or more money, or maybe we're taught to go after a healthier or a younger looking body. But those things are great and they're wonderful accomplishments, but it only takes you so far. It just leaves you with something vacant inside. There's a solution for it, and it's called 8.5 minutes. And you can shift this and you can transform it forever in just minutes a day. I designed the practice after coaching hundreds of people, and it allows you to tap into what I call your inner wins. Um, just for a moment, if you can imagine what your life would look like if your outer accomplishments didn't define you. What if instead you knew that you were extraordinary from the inside out? So that's what I did, what I created, and that's what I'm sharing with the world now is that practice. Um, I'd like to just jump in and share my backstory with you because a lot of people wonder, like, how did I get here? How did I end up doing the kind of work that I do and having the passions and commitments that I have? Um, I'm going to take you back a few years. This is when I was a freshman in high school and I was 15 years old. And I was sitting in class and I got a note to go to the guidance counselor's office. So I left class, showed up in his office and sat down. And he said to me, I said, "What are you doing here?" And I thought, well, you sent the note, and he said, I'm just wondering, why do you go to school? And the answer to the question, which I couldn't share with him, was I went to school every day so that I could eat. And I grew up in Portage, and back in those days, we had access to free lunch and free breakfast. And on school days, I got to eat twice a day, right? On days that weren't school or during the summertime, was excruciating because there wasn't access to food at that time. Um, I did again. I was taught not to talk about it, so I didn't share it with him. But he said, uh, because I got to just wonder. He said, "Do you realize that you're failing every class in ninth grade besides orchestra?" And I thought, I didn't know that. Didn't surprise me though, 'cause I loved orchestra. So he said, because I just real confused, Terry. He said, because you're actually kind of smart. And my mind, from the way that I grew up, was very suspicious of that comment. Why was he telling me this? And he went on and he said, "I want to show you something." And he pulled out some paperwork and he said, "These are the results of some testing that we did back at the beginning of the semester." And it kind of was like a placement test where you can see where you rank alongside 99 other kids your age. And he said, in math, you're like the 95th smartest kid in the room. And in English, you're the 98th. And he said, "I got it, because Terry, why are we sitting here talking about the fact that you're failing your freshman year of high school? We should be talking about where you're going to go to college." And I thought, college? I didn't even imagine I was going to graduate high school, let alone college. I never had that thought in my life. My world was about surviving. Every day was pure survival. Um, he gave me copies of the paperwork, which was really, really important for me, because if he hadn't have sent me out the room with those papers, I might have like talked myself out of that. I might have said that whole conversation didn't go down the way it did, and I would have gone back to what I was thinking. But as I was going back to class, what hit me was I realized that I had a belief about myself that I never seen until that very moment in time. And what occurred to me was up until that moment, I believed that, we call it now be that I was like intellectually disabled. And back in my day, and this wasn't a politically incorrect comment back then, but we called it being mentally retarded. So I believed that that's who I was. It's not who I am. It's not my reality. But that was what was running my life. So that came on the heels of a lot of challenges in childhood, a lot of difficulties. But when I was 12, I was actually abandoned for 3 years and lived without any adults, without food, without hot water. I smelled bad. My clothes smelled bad. A lot of times I couldn't get electricity turned on, so I would live in darkness for like days. Um, so it was a real rough time, and it took 3 years to actually get the right people to show up to get me out of that situation. Um, and it's been a lifetime and a continued journey of healing and unraveling a lot of the stories that I have about the world and myself. And all of those things, all those stories are what are our limiting beliefs. That's what holds us back, ties us down. Um, I want to talk to you a lot today about limiting beliefs. And the first thing is an understanding that typically we define who we are as people by the age of 9, is what they tell us now. And it's usually the limiting beliefs are a result of like stressful or traumatic situations that we go through. And up until age 9, our brains and our ability to reason, that's all still maturing, right? We make decisions based on very limited information. And there's often no one around us to confirm it. And even if we would think about that, we probably aren't going to go out and look for someone to confirm whether or not that information is accurate. We just take it on as a truth. We define ourselves, who we are, by various sources that, like feedback that we get from teachers, how we performed on tests, what our parents say to us, how our peers treat us, all actually also contributes to the definition of ourself. And it's usually from an authority figure, though, they find, like doctors, ministers, people like that can also have the ability to shift that. And a limiting belief about who you are as a person can happen in an instant. It can happen from one small thing that happens. It doesn't have to be like an ongoing chronic situation for yourself. So there we are, 9 years old, and then now we're going to continue growing up. One of the things that comes up for us is there's a psychological principle, and it's called belief perseverance. And what it says is that once you claim something as a core belief, once you believe it to that level, it could be a moral belief, it could be belief about yourself, you will filter out any evidence to the contrary. So if, say, for instance, I, as this child who believed that I was handicapped, would have passed 9 tests in school, but then I failed one, I would fixate on the one that I failed. And that would be further proof of who I define myself to be, versus seeing 9 tests that I had passed. What we know is that the one test that I passed, I might chalk that up as a fluke, or it was a random thing, or there was a mistake with the test and the way it was administered. I would find any other reason to dismiss that. Once you create those core beliefs for yourself, positive or negative, you'll also pay close attention to the things that support that belief. So, it's unfortunate because it really solidifies those beliefs that we would rather just kind of let go of and move on. But the good thing is that once you can shift your limiting beliefs, that principle of belief perseverance also works for positive beliefs. So you'll continue to get out there in the world and start looking for reinforcement of the good things that you found out about yourself in your life and what you're rooting for. Another aspect of limiting beliefs too is that we have limiting beliefs that we're aware of. And I can tell you what mine are. And then we also have those that are buried. And so kind of, an example I use is if I were to say, hey, Lewis, tell me some things that you want to see in your life that you don't have right now. And you would say, well, Terry, I want this, this, and this. And my response would be, that's amazing. I really want you to have all those things, right? So why don't you have them right now? And your response might be, well, it's this, 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 it's him and it's her. Well, believe it or not, the statistics that I've combined of is about 97% of people believe that what's in their way are those things that they just labeled off. And in reality, it's something they have no awareness of. So what happens is, we're like these hamsters on the wheel, right? We keep going after and trying to fix and trying to heal and trying to correct and overcome the things that we know, which is part of it, but we don't ever take the time to look and dig out the things that we don't know. And much like my story of, the results of that test that I took when I was a freshman in high school, is that I didn't know that I had that belief about myself. And that was really crippling me in a lot of ways. Imagine the ways that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy for me in my life, and how I treated education and how I treated my life and what was possible for me. So here's the cool thing, though, is that when you get in there and you actually dig out those beliefs that you didn't know you had, you can go, oh my gosh, like, look at that. That's been running my life, that belief about myself. But this is the real cool part, right? Is now that you see it, you're in a position of complete and total power, because like you get to decide what you're going to do about that belief. So you could say, well, you know what, that belief for me, I like it. You know what, it takes care of me. It keeps me safe. It works for me in these ways. And I like it. That's fine. Keep it. It's your belief, right? You could also say, oh, that's really in my way. There's no truth to that. It's doing nothing but hobbling me. So you go about the business of overcoming it, transcending it. A lot of times, though, what people will do is they'll go, there's pieces of that are really in my favor, and a lot of it's not. You have the ability to rewrite it, to rescript it, to take the pieces that empower you and serve you and make you a better person and have you show up differently in the world, and then let go of the ones that don't. That's the really cool work of it. But the work, again, is to dig out what it is you don't see, what's out there working in your life. I want to talk to you about where limiting beliefs come from. The first, most common one is someone told you who you were or who you weren't. And you could have inferred it, like you might not have even have heard it. So I always use the analogy of like when a mom is in a public situation and the child is misbehaving and they want the child to knock it off, and they can't really say anything out loud. So the mom gives the child that look. We know what that mother look is, like you better knock it off. The mom doesn't have to say a word, but the child infers a messaging from that. So that's kind of like a good working example of that. I want to pause and tell you a story about a woman that I coached to kind of also help you understand this one too, of how impactful it can be. But this was a woman who came to me in her 70s, and she had spent a lifetime working in the healthcare organization. So she'd had a great career, very solid, very stable, made good money, had a good life. And she retired from that, and she just felt like there was something that she had yet to do. So she came to me and she said, do you ever do any coaching around life, life purpose? Yeah, I do that. So she said, can you help me discover mine? Absolutely, happy to do that. So as we started to work on things, what came up for her was this memory of being in the 3rd grade, and she was given this assignment to write a story. And she was so excited about this project, and so every day after school, she would go home and work on it. She had her parents, actually proofread it for her and get it ready to go. And she actually hand typed it on an old typewriter. Like, these are old typewriters back then, it was newer, I guess. But and then she walked in, just beaming and delivering this paper on the day that it was due. And the teacher failed her on the paper and wrote 2 things on the paper. First comment she wrote was accusing her of plagiarizing the material or stealing it, And the second thing she wrote was, "You will never be a writer." And in that moment, that woman's dream and passion collapsed. I say it went on pause, right? We hit the pause button on it. So once she saw that, she was able to transcend it and move through it. The last time she wrote to me, she'd actually gotten published 3 times by that point. So that was extremely exciting, and she just felt completely, totally fulfilled. So the second way that limiting beliefs are created is that something happens around us, and we make decisions about the world and how the world works and how we fit into it. So some of the messages that I got when I was living in that trailer was, nothing is guaranteed. Money is scarce. Adults can't be trusted or relied on. And I'm on my own. That's kind of the things that I walked away from about the world. I don't know if you're familiar with how they train elephants in the circus. Is when elephants are born, they tie a rope around the elephant's ankle, and then they put a stake in the ground that attaches to the rope. And the baby elephant has this little radius, this little circle he's able to walk around in. Well, what they know is when the baby starts to try and pull the rope, he's not strong enough, right, to pull that rope out of the ground. So he fails and he just gives up. As an adult elephant, over 5,000 pounds of adult elephant, they never try to snap the rope. They don't have to chain these guys. They don't have to put them in cages. It's a psychological, it's called learned helplessness. I'm sure that you guys are familiar with it, those of you that got a lot of education and things. But in a lot of ways, because of the things that are happening around us, we become like the baby elephant. We've got our own short rope, and that's as far as we stretch ourselves, because that was the definition we made about the world. The last way limiting beliefs are created, and it's the absolute most significant and impactful, is that something happens around us or to us, and we tell ourselves something about ourselves as a result of that. For me, some of those were, I'm not worth feeding. No one cares if I exist. And I have no value at all in the world. So that last way that we create those limiting beliefs that's the most damaging, right? Because it's so personal. And it takes the most effort just to know it. Like, if once you rewrite that and explore that, to have it stick as a new belief, it'll just know it's going to take you the hardest work. So I want you to imagine too that your life is a bus. I like this analogy, but imagine your life is a bus, right? And day and night, your bus is going and it's on a journey. Imagine for a moment that you've got a 9-year-old you driving that bus. That's huge. What's the remedy? Again, identifying the beliefs that you've got, the limiting beliefs you've got, digging out the ones you haven't seen yet, and then you can start to see them from an outside perspective, a different vantage point. Once you see them from an outside perspective, they automatically start losing some of the charge, like that emotional sting that they've got to them. And then you can get about the business of rewriting them and doing any kind of healing work you need to do as a result of them. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. This is your pen and paper exercise. And this is an exercise to help you start to challenge some of the beliefs that you're aware of. We're not going to be digging in this one. This is just kind of like looking at the ones that you know of. First question to start with is, what is one of your limiting beliefs? Everybody's got a few. So what's your Second question is, do do you know where it came from? Or what happened that created that limiting belief for yourself? Do you know where it came from? Next question is, how does it show up in your life today, or where does it hold you back? And the fourth question is, what could you do or be if you didn't own this belief anymore? What could you do or be if you didn't own this belief anymore? The next step or question is, would you like to challenge the reality of that belief? Usually the answer is yes. So some of the things you want to think about, and these are possible triggers to help you challenge, is imagine that somebody said something to you about you, or that you took it in about yourself. Well, what if they were wrong? What if they were emotionally damaged, or they were just broken souls? What about that? What if it was an accident? What if you misunderstood what had happened or was said? What if it just wasn't true? So on this question, my answer, the answer I'm looking for, I guess, is that what could you say to challenge that belief? The last step or question is, how can you create a new reality? So, and this is just about rewriting the narrative or the story that you've got around this. I had something like amazing was, uh, I was in my mid 50s when my mentor and I were kind of working through something that had happened in the trailer. And again, a lot of unraveling from that situation. But I remember the day that she looked at me and said, "Well, you know, your mom was mentally ill." No, I didn't. My mom was never diagnosed. There were never conversations about that. That just contemplating that reality totally shifted a lot of what I had walked away from, from that experience with. So I invite you to just create a new reality about it. And you can take any of the possible suggestions out of challenging, to create that reality. Um, the bottom line is that so much of things happen to us, and we make definitions about ways that we're not enough in some way, and we assign blame to ourselves, and we take responsibility for all those things, and the thing is that none of it was your fault, typically, especially childhood stuff. So um, I want to segue from that, and hopefully everyone had an opportunity to do a little bit of diving in that. If you didn't and you want me to resend those questions, feel free to let me know, send me an email. I'd be happy to pop those into an email too for you if you want to really take a deeper dive with this. It's kind of hard to see how everyone's reacting because I can only see Lewis on my screen. So usually I'm watching the room to see who's got their pencils still, scurrying across the papers. So I don't have that luxury today, but so I want to share with you, just to kind of lighten it up a bit, is some celebrity stories. And I only use celebrities because they're people that we usually always know. And as I kind of tell you a little bit about them in just snippets, that think about what they might have had as limiting beliefs that created the situations that they found themselves in their realities. The first one is Halle Berry. And so I didn't know this about her, but she's won Oscars. She actually slept in a homeless shelter as she was a young girl in Hollywood trying to make her way. She had an interesting take on it, though. She's a pretty incredible soul. She said that it taught her how to take care of herself and that she could live through any situation, even if it meant going to a shelter for a little while. That's huge. A lot of people could have gone into a victim conversation about that, how hard life is or whatever. Ed Sheeran is a big guy in music, right? And he was actually a struggling musician in London. And he used to sleep in, they called it the London Underground, which was their train systems. And he would sleep on top of heating vents. That's how he survived. I didn't know that Abraham Lincoln suffered with depression for his entire life. Like, even in his presidency, he was struggling with that. And he was pretty vocal about it. Like, he didn't have a shameful message about it. And back in that day, they called it melancholy. But that was huge to achieve such grand things in the midst of that while you're struggling with that. Oprah Winfrey, I know a lot of us already know her story, but she was abused and molested as a child. She gave birth when she was 14 years old, and then that child died not long after giving birth. Imagine what she had to overcome, right, to get where she's gotten and to see the world the way she sees it and to be so selfless. On the flip side, we have Michael Jackson, who they say was $400 million in debt when he passed away in 2009. So you just got to wonder, it's just a curiosity to be like, what is going on when you get all of that, you're Michael Jackson, and then you lose all that. I'll tell you one quick thing about Michael Jackson. Usually when I introduce myself to people who don't know me and out of the area, out of the region, is I say that I was born in the same hospital as Michael Jackson. So I always thought when I was a little girl that meant I was supposed to marry him. Like it was, supposed to be. It didn't work out that way. So another story of like riches to rags, I guess, kind of story is Mike Tyson, the boxer, who he made over 400 million in his career. And when he was totally devastated, he had $23 million in debt. That's inconceivable. And those kind of numbers are like, it's hard for me to wrap my head around. But to go again from all of that to then to be in that position, I don't know. Oh, Mark Twain. Here's another one we probably already know. After he was hailed as the author of The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. That was this guy, right? He had a publishing house at that time, and the publishing house went bankrupt. And then he went into a deep, dark depression. And that's how he left us, was in that state of mind. And that was after his success, right? Stephen Baldwin is another actor. He's a brother of Alec Baldwin. He filed, Jay, we do all have a story, thank you. Got my own stories. He filed for bankruptcy, and he still had taxes and mortgages and things like that. And he lost his house in a foreclosure. He hadn't made payments in 6 years. So I'm not judging any of those people, just to say that I only use them again because we know who all those folks are. But it's like, it's a great thing to just kind of step back and say what somebody might have been going through, and then kind of mapping onto things that you might be going through or beliefs that you might have about yourself or the world, etc. So I want to shift now, and I want to talk a little bit about how we define our value. And there are actually 7 top ways that we're taught to define it. What we do for a living and what we earn, how many college degrees we have, how successful our children are, or how beautiful or talented or well-behaved they are, how attractive we are according to conventional guidelines, um, having lots of friends and an active social life, where we've traveled to, and now how much engagement we have on our social media defines our value. That's that outer wins. Again, those are not bad things. They're just, you're just looking at it backward. Every so often there's an 8th way that we can be defined from the outside in, and that's in service to others. So the only person I think of first and foremost is Mother Teresa. So the only thing we kind of really know about that gal is how much she did to help other people, how she showed up in service of other people. Um, I want to give you a visual just to kind of also help you get your head wrapped around what I'm talking about when I mean like your inner value or the outer value. So imagine that you've got a water balloon, right? And it's like halfway filled up with water. And you can squeeze the balloon, you can lean on the balloon, but it doesn't change the water. You can try to puncture the balloon with an arrow, or you could scream at the balloon, but it doesn't change the water. The reality is that you're like the balloon, and the water inside is your true value. There's no one and there's nothing that can change that value, not even you. You're worthy of absolutely everything just because you breathe. That's it. You breathe, you got a heartbeat, that's it. That's all you need to do and all you need to be. The problem is that we go around looking for confirmation for value from the outside in, and then it makes it even harder to define it from the inside out, and then to keep reinforcing that and working toward that and seeing that over and over again. It just takes even more concerted effort. Everything in our world teaches us to look from the wrong place, to define it backward. We are always swimming upstream and we're always going against the tide. And that's the truth of it. So the practice that I created, 8.5 minutes, it's something that always starts, you always start this practice, and it's a daily thing, right? 8.5 minutes, you can do that, 8.5 minutes a day. You always start it with an intention. So you could be saying, well, today I just want to relax. Today I want to overcome something that's been bothering me. You can change it as your days change and what's important to you. One of the things I'm going to play for you is a guided visualization, which is one of the tools you can plug into. If you want to get back in touch with your life purpose or the passion about your life. Once you do your 8.5 minute exercise, you always complete with a couple minutes or a couple seconds actually of gratitude. You want to be grateful to yourself for doing the work, for setting aside that amount of time that day to take yourself on and create a better life. I'm going to go ahead and play this for you because it's going to take us about 8.5 minutes, and then we'll be able to wrap up. So here we go. Let's begin. Take a slow, deep breath in. Let it out. Another deep breath in. A slow breath out. Take one more deep breath and slowly release it. Now, starting with your feet, I'd like for you to imagine that they're relaxing. The muscles are becoming looser and your feet are feeling heavier. Now let's move that relaxation up through your ankles, across your calves, over your knees, through your thighs. Your legs are feeling very heavy and relaxed. And now imagine that relaxation is coming up through your stomach, across your chest, and now feel it moving down your arms, in through your hands and your fingers. Your body feels very relaxed. Now bring that relaxation up through your neck, across your face, in your head, down the back of your neck. All the muscles in your face are relaxing. Now scan your body. If there's any tension remaining anywhere in your body, just let it go. Just relax. Just breathe normally and allow each breath that you take to bring you deeper and deeper into relaxation. And just watch your breathing for a while. Watch the air come in and out of your lungs, breathing at your normal pace. Let your body sink deeper and deeper into relaxation. I'd like you to imagine that you're in Italy on vacation. You're walking down a cobblestone path and doing some sightseeing. The sun is shining and it's a beautiful day outside. You find yourself standing outside of a museum. A young man steps out and asks you if you need any help finding a destination. You tell him that you're just taking in all of the sights, and he offers to give you a tour of the museum. You take him up on the offer. As you walk through the corridors of the museum with him, he introduces himself as Adam. He explains that he's a descendant of the famous sculptor Michelangelo. He goes on to tell you that in case you didn't know, about 500 years ago, Michelangelo sculpted a famous statue called David. As it turns out, this young fellow also has some gifts with sculpting. He asks you if you'd like to take a look at something he's working on, and you agree. You follow him through the hallways of the museum, going into places that the public doesn't normally get to visit. You reach the end of the corridor and he opens a door. Inside, you see the beginnings of a sculpture. Standing before you is a tower of marble on a small round platform. It's about 6.5 feet tall and 3 feet across. It doesn't have any shape. Adam explains to you the way that Michelangelo saw the project of carving David. Instead of chipping away at the marble to create a finished statue, he said, I created a vision of David in my mind and simply carved away anything that was not David. Adam offers you a chisel and a small hammer and asks if you'd like to start work and give it a try. You're nervous, as you've never held these tools before or done any sculpting, but you agree. Very slowly, you make small chips into the marble, and as you get used to the tools in your hands and the feel of the marble breaking away, It gets easier. He explains that he'd love for you to imagine the future expression of yourself. What would you look like if you were living the life you were truly meant to live? Showing up as your highest and best self, and connected to your true inner value, and it's absolutely unshakable. Imagine yourself in your highest expression, doing exactly what you were sent here to do. There you are, without a care in the world. How do you look? What's your facial expression? Are you smiling? Are you serious? What are you wearing? How do you feel? What emotions are coming through you right now? You keep chiseling away at the marble. Now that you have this visual image and the emotions that are connected, you keep tapping the chisel and hammer again and again, very gently and methodically. You're removing anything that is not part of that final vision of you. Anything that stands in the way or does not fit that vision falls away easily now, chip by chip, in small and large chunks. They just fall to the floor to be swept up later. Finally, your statue is complete, and you are in awe. It is truly magnificent. Adam congratulates you on your fine work, and now it's time to leave the museum. As you head back through the corridors, you now know this experience is a part of you now. Once you've seen it and felt it, it can't be undone. As you exit the building, you say goodbye to Adam at the front door and express your eternal gratitude. There are no words. The sun is still shining, and you can feel the warmth on your face. You're smiling as you head back down the cobblestone path, and it's time to go home. I'd like you to take 3 deep breaths. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. And we're complete. I know we kind of rushed into that a little bit, so hopefully that was a worthwhile experience to do that today. Um, in closing, I just would like to thank all of you for letting me share so much information. I know that there was quite a bit to digest today in the talk, and to also share my work. And I truly hope that all of you have a continued wonderful journey toward an exceptional life. And I've no doubt that you're on your way because you're in this room now. So thank you again.
Hey, thank you so much, Miss Terry. That was amazing. And we're getting some chat thank yous there. So we appreciate you, taking the time out of your afternoon and um, late morning, early afternoonish time to just talk with us about what you were mentioning there. Just a couple points that I know I took notes on. Um, just pointing out how we define our value. That was powerful to me. Just the different areas that you mentioned, the money, the degrees, the attractiveness. One of my favorites that you mentioned was the social media engagement. How we can, how many likes did we get? You go back,
Yeah.
where we traveled to, which we all talk about those things. So I like how you know, just highlighted those things. It kind of helps you to take a inventory of yourself and kind of your thought life and how you kind of engage with yourself in those different areas. So that I like that part.
Thank you.
Yes, yes. So, but thank you so much for just sharing with us. Right now, just at the conclusion of that, we'll go ahead and take a 10-minute break. It'll allow everyone to stretch, you know, get up, get your lunch and things like that. Then we'll come right back in about 10 minutes to get ready to go into our breakout sessions to kind of talk a little bit about some of the information that we received from Miss Terry. So go ahead now. We'll take 10 minutes and then we'll come right back. All right, so we're back in the main room. We didn't do an extended time. I know some people were probably working and things like that, but we have a good group of people. So wanted to bring the conversation back here and kind of share some things and kind of have a little open discussion here for a few moments. So um, we only had a few groups there. So let's start with, you know, the first thing that I mentioned, and I hope you guys got the notes that I was sending over throughout. But let's talk about defining our value and maybe some of the discussion that we had from a couple of the groups. If anybody wants to kind of share some of the things that you were mentioning.
I can go. In our group, we kind of talked about how it can be common to see your value based off your achievements or your success or not your success or your job, how well you excel at your job or your career. And then we kind of talked about how just being able to realize that your value comes from within, that outward changes so much. And what we mean by that is your career can change, your relationship status can change. I mean, a lot of things can change, your health, your economic status, but when you get that, you know, the prospect or I'm sorry, the perspective that it's more so who you are in the inside. And if you're, and a lot of us we're women of faith, so we're saying just having that relationship with God, knowing that we are created with purpose, even if things change on the outside, because that's life. It's never going to be constant. We still have value, even if you have to change a career or if you have to sometimes even change a relationship status, that doesn't take away your value. So we kind of gave ourselves grace too to say that we are human. So it is normal to have some of these, you know, perspectives and thoughts, but just to know how to use some of that to motivate you instead of destroy you. So that's kind of just a summary of our group. So
That's good stuff. And Miss Terry, please feel free to interject and jump in and add to, or, you know, comment or anything like that. As you know, we ask around for some different people to talk about what they were mentioning in the group. So anyone else want to share from their perspective, or maybe someone that didn't get a chance to share because we, you know, we had a little more condensed time there. Um, what was your thoughts? I'll share my thoughts as someone thinks about volunteering there. Um, you know, like I say, I like the list. It helps you to, like, we're so connected and life goes so fast. And sometimes these things are on autopilot. You know, when you ask someone what they do, they'll start reeling down, well, you know, I do this, net worth, you know, yeah, my kids are in college, and you know, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I do see with the list you gave, Miss Terry, it's just, it's there. It's just kind of, it's like an autopilot, and it's like kind of on cruise control, and then we don't really realize it until we stop and think like, yeah, we do kind of have some value there, you know. So you know, that's the one part I like about it, because it just helps you give some self-examination, you know, as to, you know, is it a healthy value, or is it something that I have to really kind of take a look at and see if it's like going in opposite direction, you know, in my life, you know. um Anyone else want to share what you may have talked about in your group, or maybe something that you wanted to mention, but you know, we kind of had a condensed time that you maybe want to share with the group as a whole?
Our group talks a lot about social media and how we focus a lot on our worth based on social media. We compare ourselves to other people and we say, well, they accomplished this and I didn't accomplish this. And we touched on the fact that it's really important to remember that not everyone is genuine and authentic when they're posting on social media, that they're putting their perfect foot forward instead of their best foot forward. So it's important to just remain true to yourself and make sure the things that you're remembering are that that's not exactly maybe what's going on. And I also want to add that that list is really awesome of the things that you define yourself on, but I find that the things I've been through in my life, a lot of dealing with not trying to define myself based on the trauma I've gone through in my life is really important too. So like, yeah, money status and social media and all those things. But if you're someone that's been through a lot of stuff, it's really important to realize that the trauma that you've been through, no matter what it is, doesn't actually define you either. And getting through that, like when people say like, you know, what do you do or who are you or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And you try to start with something trauma based or something like that. It's like, that's not actually who you are. It's what you've been through, is really important to remember too.
Yeah, that's really good. It kind of reminds me of a time when I was playing college basketball, and I would walk around, and it's like basketball defined me. So I would walk around even with the sense of I'm a ball player, you know, and I let what I did define me, but it quickly changed, you know, and it took some prayer and things like that. But I had to realize that I didn't want basketball to have me. I was a person that played basketball, you know. So that what you said, Emily, there, that kind of reminded me of that for myself, that I just had to change that. So that's a really good point. I believe we have some things here in the chat. Yeah, great point. We aren't our trauma. So good point, Sharbria. Um, and for you guys who don't know, Sharbria is my wife. So, but yeah, good point there. And Jasmine said, "It's not what happens to us that defines our value and identity." You're spot on there. So, thanks for sharing that. Anyone else want to share, you know, what you may have mentioned in the group as a whole, or just something that you didn't get a chance to share while you were in the group that you might just want to share now, while we're still on the topic?
I'd love to take, Emily, I just want to say your point was amazing, really amazing. And I'm going to incorporate that going forward. I love that. It just to be aware, like sometimes when we have trauma, we take it on not only as part of our identity, but we take the responsibility of the trauma as our identity. So that's just like one more wrinkle to it.
Yeah, it's really good, really good. Jay, I think you unmuted. Did you want to add anything?
Sure, I can weigh on this. This is an area that I have struggled with a lot in my life, but I have come to overcome it and grow. And one of the things that I've learned, you know, I think redefining the standard line. All of us have a certain kind of standard, and we allow the outward standard to override the inward standard. And I think we just have to redefine where that level is, and we have to learn to march to the beat of our own drum. I think about the movie The Greatest Showman, how there was one person who helped people to see and discover who they really are, despite what it looks like on the outside, helped them to see the inner beauty on the inside. And that's where we have to look at that standard line that we ultimately find ourselves in. Sometimes we kind of conform to the world and we kind of conform to the standards of others when we're missing out on the true identity of who we are meant to be and created to be, and living up to that standard. So it took me a long time to get there and to realize that. But I've also learned too that in my own failures, that is what has made me to become a better me. You know, we ultimately look at these successes and degrees and awards and all these different types of things. Yes, that's great, but that didn't happen overnight. It took many failures and many obstacles and many courses for me to go through to get to those challenges. So very much point on what Emily is saying about, the traumas in our life and things like that. So very good discussion. And I really enjoyed the breakout session that I was in. I didn't talk, I just listened, and it was refreshing. So it's always good to see you, Terry. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks, Jay.
Thanks, Jay. And something Emily mentioned here in the chat, it's something I learned myself and try to help foster kids understand too. We can heal and trauma doesn't have to be us. So great addition there. Also want to ask, and I'm not sure if you all got to this within your breakout room there, but the belief perseverance. Here's the 3 points that she mentioned before. Limiting beliefs come from someone telling you who you are and who you are not. Something happens around us and we make decisions based on that. And something happens around us and to us, and we tell ourselves something about ourselves because of it. Did anyone get to any of that dialogue? I know we had a short session there, but anyone get to that wants to add to that or maybe even discuss that? Maybe an example, no pressure to share, but if there's an example in your life that you could say, hey, I noticed something that I dealt with came from a situation, and maybe you just want to share how it impacted you and maybe just a way that you've dealt with it, to turn it around for positive. Anyone want to share on that note, or even just mention anything surrounding that, your thoughts or anything like that?
Hi, I'm Angelica. In our group, we were discussing a lot about social media, but we didn't get to touch on that. And I do realize, and I think, years of therapy will really make you understand and really see life a little bit differently. But when we were discussing like our belief and like our belief system and what's our limiting belief, like mine, I was discussing with Emily and Jay, was that I just don't ever feel my accomplishments. It never feels good enough for me. And through therapy, I really realized where that centered from. And of course, it's always something with trauma, especially childhood trauma. And I think, having a consistent father in my life, it hinders, especially when I was a kid, I was very soft-spoken. I just mind my business, did my thing, went to school, was a good kid. So my mind never affected me. I didn't, I'm fine from it. But as a kid, you really can never really be fined by something like that. But as I got older and really started to like evaluate why aren't these things making me happy, things that I'm doing and things that I want to do, and these setting goals, but also accomplishing those goals, why isn't that making me feel like proud of myself? And I felt like a lot of that stemmed from just having a very absent father, because inherently, I think it just tells you, whether you're thinking in your mind, okay, I'm okay about this, I'm fine, I'm a good kid, I'm doing the best that I can, kind of a mentality. But when you have a parent kind of reject you, it inherently starts to internalize, especially if you're not dealing with it. And at the time, my family is just struggling to get by day by day. So it wasn't something that we could even afford therapy if I wanted it. But when you're, especially when you're a teenager, I do find, I've worked with kids as well. I've worked in the education system. It's so hard to get kids to talk. Even if you're there and you show them that this is a safe space, it's hard to really have kids talk, even if they need to talk. But I think evaluating that is really important. And I do like what Emily said too about not having your trauma define you, because for a long time, I just that was something that, once you deal with it, then you're like, okay, that was trauma. I didn't even know that was trauma. But then when I realized it was trauma, then it's like I took it on. Oh, I do this because of trauma. I do that because of trauma. And it's just like you would bond with people, trauma bonding as well, and make unhealthy relationships based off of that alone. So it's like I feel like a lot of your adulthood is a lot of undoing learned behaviors, but even trauma, things that have happened to you, you have to undo what that internalized for you.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
Anything there, Miss Terry there? Did you want to add to
Yeah.
anything that she mentioned there?
The other thing that popped up, so one of the areas that I serve is I go into the local juvenile detention centers and I talk to the kids that are incarcerated. And it's not so much the trauma that happened to them, but it's more of like the choices that they've made out of surviving their worlds that define them going forward. And that's a real big conversation. So thank you for that. Thanks for that vulnerability and transparency. That was great sharing.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, that was awesome. What it made me think about too is, just us, serving our kids that we, deal with within our schools that we teach curriculums to. What some of this information that you shared today does to me is it opens my eyes to be more sympathetic because you just never know the things they're dealing with and the belief perseverance that you know there's probably so many things coming from towards them, maybe their home life. There's so many different things that are around them that they're making decisions upon or defining themselves. And so when they come to school, or either in my situation when I was a coach, when they're coming to practice and I'm dealing with the kids before me, they may be doing a certain thing or acting a certain way, but with this information, it just shows me like it could come from a lot of different places, and the way they process it could be completely different than we feel like we would. So it kind of humbles you and brings you down to at least try to understand them, because you just never know um, what caused it for them, what caused their mindset, what they told themselves because of what they received, you know,
Mhm.
and and that can still be running in the background of their mind on their palate. And we may be trying to say one thing, but they're fighting through what they've been telling themselves because of what happened to them. And so I don't know, it just opens me up a little bit more, and even what we do in serving the children. So does anyone else want to add to any of this? Or it's actually, this is an awesome conversation. I'm grateful that um, you guys are sharing and just being open and honest, and we have some things in the chat as well. So we'll take a few more moments, just to discuss some things. I just want everybody to have the opportunity to share, freely, anything you may want to, or comment on anything that we may have covered today. I just want to make sure that also at this time too, want to open it up for questions for Miss Terry. If you have any questions for her, one of the questions that I want to ask Miss Terry to kind of get the Q&A going is, what what is it for you that these kind of topics, you know, I can tell you have a passion for, talking about these things. What is it for you that maybe was that moment for you that, and I know you mentioned a few things earlier, but is there something that kind of took you over to say, you know what, this is a little passion of mine, and I really want to kind of highlight these kind of things? Kind of talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, actually, it's a story that I didn't share, but it was something that happened, and I can tell you the exact moment of time. But when I was living in that trailer, and there was a really bad storm, and at that time I was about 14 years old. And if you've ever like lived in a trailer or spent a night there, you know that the sound is like really magnified. Everything is like 10 times louder, and it was really scary. And I remember feeling fear, and I didn't typically feel that emotion because I couldn't allow it. Like there's just way too much I had to do. I couldn't entertain that. And I went from fear to being mad at God, and couldn't reconcile the God that I knew at that point to what had happened to me up until that point of my life. And I made this decision that there was no God.
Mm.
And I was so angry I couldn't even say the word God till I was in my 40s. Like that's how bad it was. And right after that, it was like I heard a voice that was outside of myself, but there was nobody there, you know? And this voice had said to me, just get through this. Everything that you've come through has been to prepare you. And you're here to change hundreds of thousands of lives. And I needed you to go through all of this to be able to do that. And I took that message and I didn't tell anybody till my 40s. And I put it in my back pocket. And it was the one thing that when I got out of that trailer and my head was a hot mess, I won't kid that, as I knew I had a lot of work to do, because I knew I had a purpose. I knew what I needed to do and I had to get cleaned up to go do it. And that's what drives everything I do, is that gift of that knowing. And I've since now have a very good spiritual relationship, so reconciled all that stuff and all that pain, but that's where everything comes from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, thanks for sharing that. And you know, it's a great story there. That's amazing. You know, I always like to, you know, just see the why behind the what and the who, you know, in terms of just, you know, what you're speaking about and your passion behind it. A lot of times we find that it comes from somewhere. And you rarely see someone that's passionate about sharing, you know, on a certain topic that they didn't have a real life encounter, you know, that really made them passionate about, you know, sharing to help change the lives of others. So, you know, I appreciate you sharing that. Do we have any more questions that, you know, any questions that you may have for Miss Terry that, you know, covered the topic, or anything that you may want to, you know, ask her in terms of some of the things that we went over today? Like I said, this has been a really great session, very informative. You know, I really enjoyed we have a question here. Authors you would recommend?
Mhm. There are some really good books that I'm kind of in the midst of. One that you might want to pick up. I'm about halfway through. Is called What Happened to You, and I can't remember the main author, but it was co-written by Oprah Winfrey, and I'm sure you can find it out there. Another one that I just read that was amazing was Brene Brown's book Daring Greatly, and that's a book about vulnerability and shame. And I just actually keynoted in California, and they had us read that book collectively as the group, and then share that before the keynote. So that was one that I had to read, but it was really great, and I was glad I read it. Ooh, thanks for the link, Jay. I appreciate that. I might pick it up on an Audible, because, you know, reading in the book form is kind of, you got to do it when you can do it. But yeah, those are probably the two big ones that I would suggest in the moment. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And Jenny, thanks for asking that. You know, appreciate that too. Like I was saying, this has been a really great session. I really appreciate everyone sharing. You know, in the breakout rooms, in this open session, just sharing and commenting on different things, and just being open. You know, because you know, some of these things, sometimes it's not as easy to just be open about things, but, you know, it's really good that, you know, you're in a place where it's safe, where you can kind of share and then get feedback. And a lot of times you just learn things, and you're able to do a lot of self-reflection, even in talking to others and hearing their story too. So before we close, I also wanted to give the floor to Sandy in case there's anything you might want to add, or any closing remarks that, you know, you may want to share with the group before we kind of close things down.
Well, I just wanted to start by thanking Terry. I think I might have to step over to another computer.
Come on over.
It's an echo.
Ta-da! Magic show. I just want to start by thanking Terry. Terry, you did an outstanding job. You made me think. You know, we start thinking about those misguided beliefs about ourselves, and I definitely am one of those people. What I wrote on my paper was so personal, I didn't feel comfortable sharing it because it was so intense. But the pieces of what I did share about it, I'm just going to share real quick a little bit about me so you understand my mindset. Is when people ask me about myself, I was a principal. That's what I say. I was a principal. And it identified me. And I don't know if I want to say that anymore. I just want to say I'm Sandy. I'm just Sandy. It says I'm Lewis on here, but I'm not. I'm Sandy, and I've reinvented myself because I retired from that. And now I'm something different, but I've always been the same person on the inside. And I just happen to have the pleasure. I don't know, those of you from outside of PATH that have seen the people of PATH, I am so lucky to be here and so blessed to work with such amazing people on amazing projects. So I still identify with my job, of course, but I'm inside, I'm Sandy. I'm not Sandy who was a principal. So that was kind of a defining moment for me today to let that go. I moved on.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So what a session. It was like therapy. I have to say, during the relaxation, I relaxed so much that it was almost to the dangerous point.
Yeah, that happens.
So thank you for that technique. I know I've used it before, but it was working very well today. So thank you for that. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. And all of you who joined us, what incredible journeys. You made yourself vulnerable today. That's why I wanted to make myself vulnerable. Here at PATH, we're going to be celebrating PATH very soon. On 2/22/22, we'd like to invite you to come to County Line Orchard in Hobart, where we will be celebrating our Ignite the Dream, Spark the Dream, Ignite the Future. I'm sorry, I had to get the whole thing right. Jay put a link in the chat for anybody who's interested in attending. We do ask that you register. It's just a celebration of what we do, and we'd like to share that with people like you that support us by coming to our lunch tables and learning about what we do. We don't try to sell you anything. We never will. That's not who we are. We're about serving. And so consider doing that. Also, you will be getting an email with a certificate and a link for the survey. If you could please fill out that survey, it helps us a lot so that we can only refine and improve our work. Does anybody have any questions for me? Terry, we need to have you back. I need part 2. So do you guys agree? Raise your hand if you think part 2 is in order. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So I really did enjoy that today, and I know Lewis did. And I want to just commend Lewis and his professionalism today and the way he took this, and he really ran with it. So Lewis, I'm very proud of you, and look at everybody's clapping for you, Lewis. It's kind of neat to see him volunteer to do this and run with it. So thank you, Lewis.
You're welcome.
Yay, Lewis. We're getting lots of yeses for Lewis. Does anybody have any questions? All right. Well, everyone, you have just the most wonderful Wednesday. Stay warm. Yeah, I think it's all going to melt by tomorrow. It'll be very nice by tomorrow. We're thinking positive. Have a great Wednesday, and we will catch you next time for, are you ready? What's love got to do with it? That's the next one, okay? So a little love for Valentine's. So we'll see you in February. Bye-bye.